Zach was a young boy with a big imagination and a thirst for adventure. He lived in a small village near the edge of the world where nothing exciting ever happened. He longed for a way to escape the monotony of his everyday life. That was until he met his best friend, Cato. Cato was a brilliant inventor who had created a time-traveling machine in his backyard workshop. "Zach, you have to come and see this," Cato said excitedly as he opened the door to his workshop. Zach rushed inside, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of the time-traveling machine. "What is this?" he asked in awe. "It's my greatest invention," Cato said, beaming with pride. "I've been working on it for months and finally got it to work. We can travel through time, Zach. Imagine the possibilities." Zach's mind raced with excitement. "Where do we go first?" he asked. "That's up to you," Cato replied. "Where would you like to go?" Zach thought for a moment. He had always been curious about the past. He wanted to know what it was like in the 1950s. He had heard that life was different back then, and he was curious to see it for himself. "I want to go to the 1950s, he said. Cato nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "That's a great idea. We can go and make sure your parents become friends and fall in love." Zach's eyes lit up. "Really? We can do that?" Cato nodded. "Yes, but we have to be careful. Changing things in the past could affect your future in unexpected ways." Zach nodded, a serious look on his face. "I understand. Let's go." Cato activated the time-traveling machine, and within seconds, Zach found himself transported back in time to the 1950s. He looked around, taking in the sights and sounds of the time period. He was amazed at how different everything was. People dressed differently, the cars were different, and the technology was far less advanced. He met up with his parents, who were both in their teens at the time. They were surprised to see him, but Zach quickly explained that he was from the future and had come back in time to make sure they became friends and fell in love. His mom looked at him skeptically. "You came back in time just to make sure we become friends and fall in love?" Zach nodded. "Yes, I want to make sure my future is a good one." His dad raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan on doing that?" Zach thought for a moment. "I'll be your wingman. I'll help you two become friends, and I'll make sure you fall in love." His parents looked at each other, then back at Zach. They both burst out laughing. "You're too cute," his mom said, giving him a hug. Zach's dad patted him on the head. "We'll see what we can do to help you with your mission." Zach was determined to make his mission a success. He followed his parents everywhere they went, trying to find ways to bring them closer together. He thought up all sorts of crazy schemes, but nothing seemed to be working. Zach was determined to make his parents fall in love. He had been trying for days, and nothing seemed to be working. That was until he had an idea. He remembered that his parents both loved ice cream, so he decided to take them on an ice cream adventure. "Mom, Dad, I have a surprise for you," Zach said excitedly as he walked into their kitchen. "What is it?" his mom asked, looking curious. "I'm taking you both on an ice cream adventure," Zach replied with a grin. His parents looked at each other, then back at Zach. They both smiled. "That sounds like fun," his dad said. Zach took them to the local ice cream parlor, and they all ordered their favorite flavors. They sat down at a table, and Zach watched as his parents started talking and laughing. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, and Zach was happy that his plan was working. As they ate their ice cream, Zach noticed that his mom was wearing a beautiful necklace. "That necklace is pretty," he said. His mom smiled. "Thank you. It was a gift from your dad." Zach looked at his dad in surprise. "Really? You gave her a gift?" His dad nodded. "Yes. I wanted to show her how much she means to me." Zach felt a warm feeling in his chest. He could see that his plan was working, and he was happy that his parents were starting to fall in love. After they finished their ice cream, Zach took his parents on a walk through the park. He pointed out all the different flowers and birds, and they talked about their favorite things. Zach watched as his parents continued to talk and laugh, and he was happy that his plan was working. As they walked, Zach noticed that his mom was holding his dad's hand. He smiled to himself, knowing that his mission was almost complete. The next day, Zach decided to take his parents on another adventure. This time, he wanted to show them his favorite spot in the park. He led them to a beautiful lake, and they sat down on a bench and watched the ducks swimming. As they sat, Zach noticed that his parents were holding hands, and he felt a sense of joy and pride. He had succeeded in his mission, and his parents were officially in love. Zach looked at his parents and smiled. "I'm happy that you two are together," he said. His mom smiled and leaned over to give him a hug. "Thank you, Zach. You're the best wingman a girl could ask for." Zach grinned, feeling proud of himself. He had successfully completed his mission, and he was happy that his parents were together. He knew that he would always have this special memory of his time-traveling adventure in the 1950s. Zach was feeling happy and satisfied with his mission to make his parents fall in love. He was ready to return to the present, but before he could, he realized something was wrong with the time-traveling machine. "What's wrong?" Zach asked his inventor friend, who was frantically trying to fix the machine. "The machine is stuck in the 1950s, his friend replied, sounding worried. "We need to figure out how to get it back to the present." Zach felt a sense of panic rise in his chest. He couldn't stay in the 1950s forever. He had a life in the present that he needed to return to. He knew that he had to find a solution to this problem before it was too late. He thought about his mission to make his parents fall in love. Could his actions in the past have caused this problem with the time-traveling machine? He wasn't sure, but he had a feeling that he was part of the problem. Zach decided to talk to his parents about what was happening. He explained the situation to them and asked for their help. His mom and dad were shocked, but they were also willing to do whatever they could to help Zach. "We'll do whatever it takes," his dad said, sounding determined. Zach was grateful for his parents' support, and he knew that they would be able to come up with a solution. They spent the next few days researching and experimenting with the time-traveling machine. Finally, they found the solution. Zach had accidentally caused a paradox in the timeline by making his parents fall in love. He had changed their story, and that was what was causing the machine to be stuck in the 1950s. The solution was simple. Zach needed to go back in time and undo his actions. He would have to go back to the moment when he first arrived in the 1950s and make sure that his parents never fell in love. Zach was hesitant at first, but he knew that he needed to do this in order to return to the present. He set the machine to go back in time, and he took a deep breath as he prepared to leave the 1950s behind. As he traveled back in time, he watched as his parents' relationship started to unravel. He felt a sense of sadness as he watched their love story disappear, but he knew that it was for the greater good. When he arrived back in the present, Zach was relieved to see that everything was back to normal. The time-traveling machine was working properly, and he was back in his own time. He went to visit his friend, who was overjoyed to see him. "You did it!" his friend exclaimed. "The machine is working again!" Zach smiled, feeling proud of himself. He had solved the time-travel conundrum, and he was glad to be back in the present. As he walked back to his house, Zach thought about his parents and their relationship. He knew that they would never remember the time that they had fallen in love in the 1950s, but he would always have that special memory. Zach smiled as he realized that he had learned a valuable lesson about time travel and the consequences of changing the past. He was grateful for his adventure, and he was ready for whatever the future had in store for him.